Hello everybody, my name is Lyubomir Yanchev and I'm the CEO and founder of MClimate. I'm here today to share that we are releasing a new firmware version of Vicki, and as you might know, Vicki has firmware upgrade over the air capabilities, so it's pretty nice to know that once we release a new firmware version, this can reach all the Vickis that we have produced, and we can always offer you the best device with the best software. And here I'm about to talk about the 4.3 version, which is a pretty nice version. We have invested a lot of time into developing it and also testing it, but I'm just gonna go over the features and explain a little bit about them, what's new, what you should expect, and yeah, I'm keen to hear about your feedback once you update your devices. But yeah, some major changes is, first, now we have an antifreeze function, and this antifreeze function works with, basically there are three temperatures. One is activation temperature, so below what temperature does the antifreeze activate. Then what is the deactivation temperature, so above what temperature does the antifreeze function deactivate, and then there is, when it's active, what should be the target temperature. So this is a feature that basically is like a safeguard for the device. Normally, if you're using automatic control mode of Vicki, then you would get this by default. But now this functions with higher priority compared to the manual control. So if you're using your own cloud to control where exactly how much flow does Vicki allow through the radiator, then this function would override the manual control and just make sure that no systems are ever damaged. Not that we have had damaged systems, no, but it's just a safeguard for you guys. So I'm gonna quickly switch to the release notes. This is what you find in the documentation, but about the antifreeze functionality, you can see that there are, as I said, three temperatures. So by default, the activation temperature, activation threshold, it's 6 degrees. So it means that if Vicki measures below 6 degrees, it's going to activate the feature. Then second is the deactivation threshold, which is by default 9 degrees. So if the measured temperature in the room goes over 9 degrees, it's going to get out of this antifreeze function. And the antifreeze target temperature is 7 degrees. So basically, when temperature in the room drops to 6 degrees, then it sets a new target temperature of 7 degrees. Even if it's in manual mode, it still allows flow through the radiator, and then this function is disabled and it goes back to manual control once the measured temperature raises above 9 degrees. So this is one. The second feature that I'm really excited about is the minimum and maximum valve openness definition. So you can imagine that for some scenarios, like for example hydronic balancing, where you have basically the radiators that are first on the circuit, first on the riser as it's called, they would get more flow typically. So hydronic balancing is has been there for a long time, but what the manual hydronic balancing does is basically limit the maximum amount of flow through the radiator. And instead of adjusting the valve itself, now you can set this feature in Vicki. So you can say, open to maximum, let's say 60%. And this, is very system specific. It's something that has been requested by some of our customers, and I'm happy to announce that it's out there. The second part of this function, which is the minimum part, says, if you open the Vicki, if the algorithm opens the Vicki, what should be the minimum amount of valve openness? So this is more about comfort. During calibration, essentially, some amount of the motor range that Vicki calibrates to is more about compressing the rubber inside the valve itself. So essentially, some valves we see that they open from 0%. We see some valves that are opening, for example, from 5% and above, actually allows heat to flow through the radiator. So this function is very useful if you want to kind of have quicker heat up of the room and define, you know, if a valve opening is required, then open minimum of, let's say, 5%. By default, min and max is 0 and 100, so the devices would continue behaving as now, but we give you the ability to set the min and max valve opener values. The third point is also very nice. It's also about comfort. So, you know, 23 degrees, let's say, or 22, or whatever the temperature is perceived by people in different ways. You know, this depends on what is the humidity, what is the temperature of the surfaces around them, like the wall, the window, let's say the bed. So now you can, instead of set target temperature of 23, you can say it's 23.5, 23.4, whatever you desire. But it's important to mention that now in the uplink decoder, Vicki is going to report two temperatures. It's going to report the target temperature, the same property as before, with the full degrees. So if it's 23.2, it's going to report 23. And then there is a second property in the decoded keep alive value from Vicki, which is the target temperature float, which is with the decimal point essentially. So in order not to break your system, you can just you know, replace the uplink decoder, and you know, you can just work with target temperature float from now on, or you can still continue working with target temperature, but we've basically separated them in order to make your life easier and not mess up any database things. And the fourth major thing is the measure temperature offset. So you know, Vicki actually measures the temperature very, very precisely. We're using a very high quality automotive grade temperature and humidity sensor, and the radiator is a pretty good place where you can measure the temperature. Why? Because when it heats up, you know, it causes convection in the room. So essentially there's hot air, this hot air from the radiator rises up, and which draws cold air from underneath the radiator. So Vicki, you know, it measures temperature very well. If for some reason you want to put a temperature, measure temperature offset, that's possible. And also this comes with a kind of a hidden advantage in some cases. But essentially you can, if you apply positive measure temperature offset of, let's say, 2 degrees, it would essentially mean that when it shows 25 on the thermostat, the actual target temperature is 23. And vice versa, if you apply negative offset, it would mean that it's showing, let's say, 19, but it's actually heating up to 21. So a lot of flexibility there. I'm curious what you guys are gonna come up with, the implications of this, but yeah. Some minor things in the firmware include further calibration and motor driver improvements. So there are all types of valves in the world. You know, we also have the issue of adapters, but unfortunately there's no way around it. We have to stay with the adapters. But you know, some valves in projects are brand new, and some valves are very old. And the older valves, you know, they can get stuck because of calcification, and many things can happen. We have seen, you know, customer sites where we, you know, do a review visit. We visit all the rooms after the installer has installed all the devices, and we see that actually some of the valves are leaking. So not everything is, you know, noticed during installation. But you know, seeing such things, we just you know, we're committed to continue improving the motor driver, because it's at the end it's one of the most important things in Vicki. It controls the flow. And just to add a small note, the case that I mentioned about the leaking valve, it was nothing related with the Vicki. It was with the valve itself. But it kind of shows you that we have to deal with variety of valves in the world, and you know, that's why we continue improving. The second minor improvement is something that has been requested by some of you, but it's in the proportional integral control algorithm for the temperature control. There are two components. One is the proportional part, which is essentially if the error between the target and measured temperature is, let's say, 2 degrees, we multiply the proportional gain by the error, which is 2 degrees. So this is where we get the proportional part and the integral part. For those of you who don't know, the integral is basically just adding up the error values. So you can imagine that as the target temperature is higher, then the error between the target and the measured temperature is positive. So target minus measured equals some positive number. If somebody, if you decrease the target temperature of Vicki, then it's vice versa. The error becomes negative, and basically you can imagine it, the integral part is kind of the sum of the historic error values. So the integral part tries to maintain the temperature over time, whereas the proportional part tries to maintain the temperature based on the current conditions, right now. So in order to make the control more responsive, we added a wind-up, anti-wind-up value. So this means that the integral, we say, okay, you can accumulate all the errors, but the overall sum of them should not exceed a certain number. And I think by default it was something like 50 degrees in the past. I'm not quite sure. Take a look at the documentation if you're interested, but now essentially there is a set and get command for the anti-wind-up value. Something pretty technical, not all of you are going to understand it, and that's fine, because at the end Vicki works outside of when you get it outside of the box, it works by default, but we are committed to kind of adding more and more things that people can configure for their specific use cases. Again, related with the algorithms, we have decided to discontinue the proportional control algorithm, because the proportional integral is performing way better for us in installations, and we have to free up memory inside of the device. At the end, this is an IoT device. It's developed in a way where it can be as affordable as possible, so no big Linux running on the device. Everything is inside a very small microcontroller, and kind of removing features, removing things that we stop using. It's important so we can save up space for some new things. Another minor thing that has been requested is to be able to set the valve openness in percentages. So this works only in the manual mode, where you disable the internal algorithm and somebody, some external system is controlling the valve openness. But now there is a set command to adjust the valve openness in percentages. It's only a whole number, so no decimal point, but that's more than enough. This has been requested by a lot of system integrators. So thank you for letting us know, or what you want, what you need. But yeah, you see, we're trying to develop new things according to your requests. And also another thing that I think is going to make things easier for IoT platforms in general, it's that in the uplink decoder now we report the valve openness in percentages. So prior to this, a little bit more technical, you had the motor range and then you had the motor position. We still have them in the keep alive. But now you also have the valve openness, so instead of doing any calculations on the data, you can just directly show it into the system. Another minor thing is the measured temperature range now starts from -5 degrees. Prior to this, the lowest temperature Vicki was reporting was 5 degrees. We have decided to shift this a little bit and start from -5. And another small thing, but I think with big impact, is the motor retraction when powered up. So each time you power up the device and you see the high on the display, essentially the motor is gonna retract, so it's gonna, if it's sticking out a little bit, it's gonna go to fully open position. So yeah, this helps. I'm curious to see what are the implications of this. And last but not least, quickly how to perform FWOTA. So FWOTA is firmware upgrade over the air. And just want to mention the 4 main steps, and then I'm going to show you the documentation. But first, obviously, you create an account with the MClimate Enterprise. This is an IoT platform for building management of our devices. You cannot control other devices through the enterprise, but it's I would say the best platform for our devices. Then you create an account. It's a free account, as any other system, name, password, that's it. Second, you connect your LoRaWAN network server to our cloud, and you can find instructions about this in the documentation on how to do it. We have integrations with, I believe, more than 15 different LoRaWAN network servers. So view the detailed instructions. Usually that's something easy. It involves also creating a security token in the enterprise, but you're going to see in the documentation how to do it for your specific ones. Then you create a building and add the devices in the enterprise. So essentially, as a user, you can create as many buildings as you want. But when you create a building, it essentially says, okay, this is the name of the building, this is the address, and I want those devices inside. You can also split them by floors, by rooms, by offices, but that's up to you. In order to perform the photo, you don't have to put them into floors, etc. But you just have to add them to the building. And then the last step is basically to use the firmware management section in the enterprise, and I'm going to show it in a second. But it's a place where you can initiate the photo, you can track the progress, and things like that. Some small notes. First, contrary to common belief, water does not affect the battery life of the device significantly. The photo and the time to do the photo and the energy needed for the photo is mainly dependent on the spreading factor of the device. And if we're talking about an entire building, then obviously if there are more devices, it might take longer than if you're updating them, if you're updating only one device. But this depends on a number of things. Usually when it's SF7, the time required for the photo takes anywhere between 4 to, I would say, 10 hours maximum. Yeah, it's something that we cannot really say, okay, it's going to take exactly this much, because it depends on the number of devices, number of gateways, etc. And during the photo, we advise you on temporarily turning off the duty cycle restriction of the gateway. Just for a quicker update, the duty cycle restriction, it might cause issues. We might go over the restrictions, especially for big sites with hundreds of devices, with, even though many gateways, it's just better if you temporarily disable the duty cycle restriction. And so let me show you where you can find the photo information. So when you go to, I'm going to start actually from our website. And on the website, if you go to resources, you're going to see LoRaWAN technical resources. So you click on here, and then it's basically is split in a few sections. First is the technical information about devices. If I click here, I'm going to be taken to a page for Vicki especially. But if I scroll down, then you're going to find which network servers are we compatible with, have been integrated into the enterprise. Then you have some other tools, the payload helper, the compatibility tool, the battery estimation, but let's leave this aside. So you click on any device you want, and then you're taken to this page, docs.mclimate.eu, and then you have this article here, which basically takes you over the most important things about photo. What are the benefits? What is the difference between photo over LoRaWAN or over, let's say, NFC, Wi-Fi, etc. And then it takes you over the steps of how to create a building, initiate the photo session. But essentially, we link to other guides. Here, once you have created the building, you have added the devices to the building, where we have different articles about how to do it. But then you click on firmware management and you're taken to a page where you see all the devices. You can select them like that, and then click on firmware management, and then a pop-up appears where you select the new version that you want to apply. You click on initiate it, and then you essentially just track the progress. And yeah, it's pretty easy. I'm curious to see your feedback from the 4.3 firmware. It's been tested a lot. It has passed through all our certification procedures to certify a firmware for release in the public. We have tested it in many buildings, and here on this note, I just want to thank all our partners. First, for working closely with us, especially some of them giving us feedback, allowing us to also advise them on how, what best practices we've seen, in different installations. But second, to all the people that just want more, I think that's important. It's important to, be happy with what you have, of course, but then just want more things of the device. And believe me, if those suggestions that you're sending us make sense for the majority of our clients, we want to implement them. We are committed to continuous improvement of all of our products, and that's why all of our products at this point also have a FOTA, because this just adds a huge amount of security, security in the sense of not being worried that you're stuck with one device, one firmware, and that's it. Security that if we do something new, like let's say the measure temperature offset or the min-max valve openness, you're going to be able to benefit in your projects, in your buildings from them. So huge thanks to everybody that supports us in this way, works closely with us, gives us suggestions, asks us questions, and allows us to improve. And big thanks to every partner, everybody that's using Vicki or any other MClimate product, because you are, I would say, the most important part in our journey in decarbonizing buildings and achieving climate neutrality, or at least decreasing the impact that buildings have on the climate. We're committed to creating devices that are retrofitting existing buildings, and again, huge thanks for just supporting us, using our products. Really, really big thanks. And with that, I'm gonna finish. If you have any questions, we're there, and write us at support@MClimate.eu, comment below this video on YouTube, and thank you very much for the time.